The Chargers are going to look like a completely different team in 2024 after overhauling the entire franchise in the offseason, but the one place where they improve the most is absolutely Jim Harbaugh and this new coaching staff.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. We always appreciate you guys, and to make sure that you miss no shows, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, we're going to get into this coaching staff and why the Chargers got a lot better there. They went from a 500 coach to a coach who has the highest active winning percentage in the NFL right now. And of course, that is Jim Harbaugh. On offense, I don't think they got much better talent-wise, but depth-wise, I think they are exponentially better there. On defense, a lot of new faces, and I think they are definitely hoping on some players to bounce back.
Yeah, and I think that depth and things like that, and hoping this coaching staff can get more out of the players that they already have and the new players they bring in, is all part of the formula. But how quickly will it translate? How much less talent do they have on this year's roster did they and have in years past? But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. David, we were kind of going together with just as far as what this team has improved on, what the offseason has looked like overall. And when we were talking it through, we basically came to the conclusion that it's not close where the biggest improvement is. Whether you're talking about coaching or the talent on offense and defense and the departures in free agency or trades and things like that, the biggest addition, and possibly kind of addition by subtraction even to a certain extent, is Jim Harbaugh and this new coaching staff, starting with the main man in charge, Jim Harbaugh, because going from Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh, it's hard to know how many wins, like quantify the, wins above replacement that he would have.
Yeah.
But it easily is where the biggest improvement on this team is. The Chargers are going to compete and be a winning team, in my opinion, this year because instead of Brandon Staley, they have Jim Harbaugh, even with questions on the roster.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you looked at Brandon Staley as the head coach of the Chargers, you just kind of thought, what was the identity of this football team? What did he bring? What was he, what was his imprint going to be? You don't have to think about that with Jim Harbaugh. You know exactly what this identity is going to be. They're going to be a physical football team. They're going to be a smash mouth football team. They're going to be a disciplined football team. That's what Jim Harbaugh has brought at every single stop that he has been at the college level and at the NFL level with the San Francisco 49ers. A physical identity and an identity in winning.
It's also an improvement on the way the Chargers hire coaches, right? They didn't go with a young up-and-coming coordinator. They went with the guy who's established, and you've already seen do it at this level. You know that he's a guy also where I think this helps him, a guy only focused on coaching. He's not focused on calling plays offensively. He's not focused on calling plays defensively. He is the head coach of this football team.
The CEO.
And the big thing that ended up coming out, and when the seam started to split with Brandon Staley, it wasn't, how he kind of converted guys defensively and how that translated. It was losing the locker room. And the things that started to come out at the end, whether it was not telling a player happy birthday or just players feeling like they weren't in the exclusive Brandon Staley club like some of the other players were. So as much as he preached that at the beginning of it, Jim Harbaugh lives that. Jim Harbaugh is a guy that his players rally around, and he's a kind of interesting personality, but he knows how to run a team. He's a franchise builder. He's a championship franchise builder. I mean, He just won at the biggest stage of college football, and you're taking him kind of at the height of his powers after already seeing him do it once before and knowing that he can handle that transition that many college coaches can't do jumping to the NFL level. But when you're talking about the next best thing after that, to me, it's Jesse Minter over Derek Ansley, which is really kind of over Brandon Staley again. But getting Jesse Minter fully devoted, only being this defensive coordinator and calling plays for this defense.
I think it's absolutely the second biggest thing as far as the advancements in the coaching prowess here. Just a little reminder of what Brandon Staley's defense was last year. 28th in total defense, 362.9 yards per game. Pass defense, 30th, 249.8 yards per game. 18th in rushing defense, 113 yards per game, and 24th in scoring defense at 23.4 points per game. Jesse Minter just authored the number 1 defense in all of college football last year, and there's examples of that same defense, probably a little bit different, with Mike McDonald with the Baltimore Ravens last year, having the number 1 overall defense in the NFL. So we know that this system works, and also to ease the transition, he brought pretty much his entire defensive coaching staff with him from Michigan to the Chargers to make sure that that transition is as smooth as it possibly could be.
And to me, the things that make me most hopeful is, unlike Brandon Staley, he does have those guys that actually have coached his defense before.
Exactly.
Unlike with Staley taking a ton of college guys who have been under Vic Fangio, but never had been under his actual defense in years past. Nobody from the Rams came over defensively that year. The other thing, like I said, only focused on the defense. The defense is only as good as how well your players understand it. And that was the thing that always got lost in translation with Brandon Staley. He was a perfectionist, and when it worked spectacularly. The primetime game against the Dolphins where they embarrassed Tua and the Dolphins on national television, right? That was way too few and far between. Like, that didn't happen often. And the problem is one player was out of place. Catastrophe happened, right?
Yeah.
If one player was out, it was a broken play, a busted coverage. This is the other thing. With Jesse Minter specifically, he puts the players in charge of the disguises. He's not trying to tailor everything, right? It's know the defense first, put the players in charge of, hey, I know this well enough. I know what the offense is trying to do. I'm going to disguise it myself, but I know what my assignments are. I think that's another really big part of it. Feels like you also had to mention Ben Herbert, too. Somebody we didn't talk about
for sure.
Ben Herbert, gigantic improvement over the strength and conditioning guys that they had before. His entire new staff that he has, a huge improvement. He's one of the best in the business. That's just proven. Next, I would go offensive line, David. Mike Devlin, Nick Hardwick over Brendan Nugent and Sean Surratt, the guys they had before. After Frank Smith left, that offensive line got so much worse, and he was way overachieving, Frank Smith was. And we never really saw the development and improvement after he left. I think those guys, as opposed to what they had before, I think you can expect a real improvement.
I agree. I love the compliment that these guys have within each other. You have Mike Devlin, who has been an offensive line coach in the NFL for over 20 years at multiple different stops and has a proven track record of success. And then you have Nick Hardwick, who is one of the best offensive linemen probably in Chargers history and really understands what it's like to play offensive line at the highest level for this franchise, for this football team. So you marry that experience with that kind of history of playing offensive line at the highest level together. And I think that has all the makings of a perfect marriage to try to produce better results developing a very young offensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a whole offensive kind of group that's a little all over the place as far as coaching goes because there were so many changes last year, even under Brandon Staley, right? Moving on from Kellen Moore, bringing in, Doug Nussmeier as well as the quarterback coach. Like, if you're talking about the other kind of receiving votes, I love that you get Shane Day back. I love that you bring Navarro Bowman in. Is Greg Roman better than Kellen Moore? It's hard to say, but I know he's a much better fit for what Jim Harbaugh wants to do, which is obviously what they're trying to do and where the direction is they're taking this franchise right now. But the offensive line coaches, right, the guys in charge of helping Joe Alt make the switch to right tackle, maybe helping Trey Pipkins become a guard, getting more out of Bradley Bozeman, getting a bounce back from him, getting more out of Zion Johnson and Jamari Sawyer, untapped potential with those guys. So I think those offensive line coaches have a lot on their plate. And I do think that you're going to get an improvement over what you've seen in years past. And I think that's something to get excited about. Feels like Nick Hardwick is going to be a great coach, a dude who was kind of physically undersized and always kind of had to be a cerebral player. Mike Devlin, who has the experience. Greg Roman's kind of a de facto offensive line coach as well. So I think a lot to like there. Andy Biscoff, another guy who's, the run game coordinator. All those guys should have a hand in it. And I really am bullish on this kind of room's chances of improvement under a new coaching staff in a new direction. But let's talk about the offense, David, because the offense, it's really hard to argue that they got significantly more talented, but it does feel like they're deeper. And we're talking about the most improved position on offense and also the biggest questionable group in that room and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys, though, about FanDuel because it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. That means you can pick the biggest favorite, and even on the money line, you don't even have to use the spread or anything else, and if they win, you get $150 in bonus bets. And adding FanDuel on top of the playoffs is already awesome. I know I'm hoping for a big bounce back from my Ice Cats on Tuesday night, the Florida Panthers. You can get that at -1.5 at +155 for them to win by 2 goals. Need a bounce back at home. Got to send it to Game 5 at the Garden. I don't know why the Panthers are my favorite hockey team, but I'm looking for a big bounce back, and I think they are the better team in that series. But if you're only looking forward to football season, the good news is on FanDuel, you can already get Week 1 odds. You can get the Chargers at home against the Raiders as 3.5-point favorites. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. David, we talked about where the Chargers made their biggest improvement, but it's hard to say where the Chargers improved with their offense. I mean, it's tough because you lost so many players. You're trying to basically replace the entire nucleus of your offensive skill positions. That just is what it is. But I do want to tell everyone to make sure they're checking out the Locked On Sports Today, first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel where you get coverage of every sport around the country the way that only the local Locked On experts can provide that insight. So make sure you guys go subscribe to that. But David, when you're looking at the offense and trying to answer the question, did the offense get better? What would you answer?
Yeah, it's really hard to say that they got better talent-wise. I mean, when you lose guys like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Austin Ekeler, Gerald Everett, I mean, those are the guys that really made your offense go last year. But when you consider the depth that the Chargers have really brought in through free agency and through the draft, I do feel like they're a deeper football team offensively than they were. I think they are more capable of being able to sustain those injuries and still be able to maintain a quality level of play.
They don't have as much top-end talent as they did. That's just a fact. You can't say that they're more talented at the top. Can you say they have a better cumulative talent on the offensive side of the ball? I think you could argue it, and I think the biggest feather in that cap, the biggest way that you could argue it is saying the Stars weren't playing anyways. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
when you're
fact.
looking at the group of 2023, you're talking about Mike Williams missing 14 games, Corey Linsley missing 14 games, Keenan Allen missing 11 games between 2022 and 2023. The offensive line should be deeper. The tight ends definitely improved in run blocking for sure. And
No
how
doubt.
much is the difference between that and, what they're losing in Gerald Everett will be kind of hard. Wide receiver room is deeper, I would say, but much less experience. When you're looking at the additions, Hayden Hurst, Will Dissly, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Bradley Bozeman, DJ Chark, then you have the draft picks, Ladd McConkey, Kamani Vidal, Brendan Rice, and Cornelius Johnson. This room had to get so much younger that it had to be rebuilt. I would have still loved for them to keep Keenan Allen, of course. But you're talking about your main guys being a diminished version of Austin Ekeler, Gerald Everett, who's getting up there and never kind of really broke through, but was a very solid receiving option. Keenan Allen, that's at the height of his powers, and I have no ill thing to say about him, but he did miss 4 games last year. And Mike Williams, who you couldn't keep betting on again as an almost 30-year-old wide receiver with the injury history that he has there and the type of play style that he has.
Yeah.
It had to change. Is it less talented this year at the top end? Yes. You have way more question marks about this group, but it's a more balanced, deeper offense than we saw in 2023. So if you're talking about what the most improved group is of this offense, where would you go?
Yeah, I think for most improved here, I'm looking at the running backs. I do feel like the running back group, and not just the running back group, but who's installing the plays for the running back group. Obviously with that being Greg Roman, who has authored many successful rushing attacks through, several different years with several different
Every
franchises.
team he's ever been with.
Right.
Yeah.
Top 10 rushing attacks everywhere, right? Literally. And so when you pair that with, I think better running backs that are fit better for this system with Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and then, of course, the draft pick, Kamani Vidal, I think you have 3 different running backs who all bring different things to the table, but have all shown some success at their different various levels. Obviously, Gus Edwards, being that short yardage demon who's really able to, punish people in those situations. J.K. Dobbins, when healthy, was averaging almost 6 yards a carry. And then Kamani Vidal, at his level of competition in college football, was just purely dominant. So I think they all have skill sets that match well together. And when you put them in a system with a curator of offensive rushing with Greg Roman, I think that you have a recipe for a large amount of improvement in this group.
Yeah. Last year was the worst version of Austin Ekeler that we've seen, period.
Yeah.
His backup was Josh Kelly, who averaged 3.8 yards per carry. It's not all on the running backs. The receivers and the tight ends blocked horribly.
Sure.
The offensive line didn't block well for the running backs either. But Josh Kelly averaged 3.8 yards per carry, and that was with a 49-yard touchdown. Every carry besides his 49-yard touchdown, he averaged 3.38 yards per carry.
So many negative or just short runs, right?
There just wasn't really anything to really love from that group at all. So, I mean, even if you're leaving out Greg Roman, you're leaving out the scheme and all of those things, I just think it's a better looking room with J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Kimani Vidal, even not knowing what he's going to look like at the NFL level. I think you have every right to feel like that's a group that's going to be massively improved in 2023 or 2024.
Absolutely.
Because they just, what were the bright spots for that room in 2023? They're hard to find. These guys fit better with what they're doing now. Austin Ekeler is never going to be a fit once you decided to bring in Greg Roman. And I think that if you get 80% of what J.K. Dobbins can be, if you get a semi-healthy season of Gus Edwards, if you get Kimani Vidal bringing, any of the game that he had in college that translates to the NFL level and just what he brings on third down as a pass protecting back.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a better room. And I love that there is the most improved. Offensive line could be the most improved, even though they only added Joe Alt. Tight ends could be the most improved. Both of those have questions, but I'm looking forward to talking about the offensive line with someone who actually plays on it, Bradley Bozeman, the new addition on Wednesday's Locked On Chargers podcast. So make sure you guys are back here for that. Let's talk about the biggest question mark, though, David. To me, it's the wide receiver room. We didn't talk about this before, but I'm guessing that's what yours is too.
100%. That's what it is, Daniel. I mean, obviously great minds think alike here, but there's just a ton of questions here for me. Who will emerge as the top wide receiver option? Will Quentin Johnson be able to take a leap in his sophomore season? How quickly can Ladd McConkey establish himself with Justin Herbert? Is it going to take time for them to get that rhythm, to get on the same page? What does DJ Chark offer to this offense? Yeah. How quickly can he get on the same page with Justin Herbert?
That is a lot of questions.
Who's going to take and who's going to take that last spot? Is it going to be Cornelius Johnson? Is it going to be Brendan Rice? Who knows? I mean, there is a ton of different questions in this wide receiver room.
Yeah, and a wide receiver room that loses Keenan Allen is going to be worse. Like I talked about at the beginning of this segment, it is worse as far as the top end talent goes. There's nobody that's going to reproduce what Keenan Allen's production was last year. Can you replace it with numbers? Somewhat. It's not the same because you don't have that guy that's just, you're no doubt about it, wide receiver one like you talked about. To me, going back to what you said, these are the main questions as far as if they're able to answer all these things positively, this receiver group is going to be okay, because this has a huge variance. This could either be an above average wide receiver room, or it could be one of the worst in the league.
Yeah,
that's how big of a gap it could be. Can DJ Chark bounce back? Can QJ take a leap? How much can you expect to get from the rookies? That's it to me. Like, those are the questions I have. And, I think another one you could throw in, is there another level to Josh Palmer's play? What do they think of Josh Palmer? Yeah. I mean, there's so many questions right there. I mean, you added DJ Chark, Ladd McConkey, Brendan Rice, Cornelius Johnson. You lost Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jalen Guyton. Between Jalen Guyton and Mike Williams, as far as the 2023 version of the Chargers, what are you really losing there? 3 really good games of Mike Williams where he looked like he was going to be a star in Kellen Moore's offense. Yes, but you're missing that most of the season. So if we're talking about, those guys, trying to fill in the void you had, but just losing Mike Williams and Jalen Guyton, that won't be that hard. Keenan Allen's a big one. So I think that, can you attack it with numbers? Sure, but you need Ladd McConkey to be good. You need Quentin Johnson to take a leap. You need DJ Chark to bounce back. All of those things have to be in the green and be positives if this is going to be an above average unit for the Chargers in 2024. But I think I can definitively say that the Chargers defense got better. And the biggest reason is I don't think the guys they lost are going to miss very much. And I think that the guys they brought in with the rookies, with some improved play potentially from guys bouncing back this year under the Chargers and Jesse Minter, I think there's a lot of reasons to feel like this should be a much improved defense in 2024, and we're going to get to all of the reasons why and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually will go down closer it gets to the first pitch. And David actually just used the Game Time app to go see his favorite team, the San Diego Padres, while he was in San Diego and to go play against the New York Yankees. So what a time to be alive. What a time to have Game Time there to make sure that you're getting the best price. The great thing with Game Time, too, is you can also toggle the prices to make sure you're getting all-in prices up front. No surprises when you get to the checkout. The price you see is the price you get, and you know you're getting the best price because you also have the Game Time guarantee, meaning if you find your ticket, your seat, same row for less on another site, Game Time will match you 110% of the difference. So make sure you guys just check Game Time out. If you don't have anything to do for the weekend, you scroll Game Time and you're going to find out so many different events, whether it's sports, music, comedy, theater, whatever it is, and you can just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, David, we have to get into the defensive side of things. And I think that for the defense, I feel much more comfortable, much more confident saying the defense got better during the offseason. And there's not a single move that tips the scales. There's no addition of Khalil Mack or anything like that where you're just like, okay, that's why, right? Even the draft, the first 2 rounds, you went offense. No first or second round pick to try to improve what was one of the league's worst defenses, not only last year, but the entire Brandon Staley era. But to me, I just feel like, David, I don't think that they lost very much. Sebastian Joseph-Day, Kenneth Murray, Austin Johnson, Michael Davis, Eric Kendricks. I liked Eric Kendricks in certain places, but he was a liability other places as well. And then what they added might not seem like a ton, but I absolutely think it's better than it was last year.
I agree for sure. I think when you look at the additions, yeah, there's some buy low candidates on there, but I also feel like there's just some solid pros in there as well. I mean, you bring in Christian Fulton, so obviously he's the bounce back candidate there. Puna Ford just didn't get a lot of opportunities to play last year. He was a healthy scratch more often than not. Denzel Perriman, old friend alert, a guy who's obviously started his career with the Chargers, and we know what he brings. He's a physical linebacker that is going to run through the whistle, and he plays like a Tasmanian devil. You got to love a little bit of Denzel Perriman. Bud Dupree, you bring in Bud Dupree, who is just a solid edge rusher in this league. A guy's been around for a very long time, who has produced at a very high level. And then you bring in the rookies. You got Junior Colson, you got Justin Aboigbe, you got Tarheeb Still, and you got Cam Hart. So I just think the overall collection of talent that you added to this defense, probably more players that are more of a scheme fit for this specific defense with Jesse Minter. And I feel like you have some guys that you feel comfortable, you know what they're going to bring, and some guys you hope are going to be able to bounce back and play at a higher level.
Absolutely. And I think when you're talking about the guys that they lost, almost all of those players were liabilities.
Yep.
In one way or another, they just were. And I think when you're looking at, how much this defense can really improve, I think you have to ask yourself, can Christian Fulton, even if he doesn't turn into a top 10 corner in the league, can he play better than Michael Davis and J.C. Jackson did last year? Is that out of the question?
9 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, and that was the guy that wasn't J.C. Jackson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was a world-class disaster last year. Like, can Christian Fulton, I don't know if he's going to rebound and be a top corner in the league. Can he play better than those guys? I absolutely think he can.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Can the new linebacker room outplay what Eric Kendricks and Kenneth Murray brought? Kenneth Murray was a liability for 4 years. Eric Kendricks had obvious liabilities in coverage.
Yeah.
I do. And that's with some question marks in that room. So I think like Sebastian Joseph-Day never worked out. Austin Johnson was never good for the Chargers. No. There were guys who, Brandon Staley thought would fit. They never played well. Kenneth Murray never played well. Michael Davis hasn't played well in several years at this point. He had a good stretch. He had a good stretch at the end of 2022, but he never consistently was good. And he was really bad last year. So I just think that even if the names don't blow you off, or they just don't blow you away, it's addition by subtraction to some ways. You have guys on defense like Junior Colson, Justin Aboigbe, and Cam Hart that I think you feel good about and can have roles as rookies potentially. So I think the defense definitely got better in the offseason. If you're talking about the most improved group, There's a couple you could make the argument for as far as could be most improved. And again, it's because a lot of the skill groups were bad last year. But I think you end up going with the edge rushers, even though they only added Bud Dupree.
Well, I just think it's just such a deep group. I mean, first and foremost, you were able to bring back Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, but not only were you able to bring them back, you were able to get them to agree to take pay cuts to come back to play for Jim Harbaugh and for Jesse Minter. So I think that speaks volumes, with that for that coaching staff. And then, of course, you have Tuli Tuipulotu that was fantastic last year. I mean, an NFL-ready run stopper already as an edge rusher, showed some flashes early on as a pass rusher, probably slowed down a little bit, hit that rookie wall for sure. But I feel like you get him a full offseason to be able to fully prepare, already knowing what it's like to go through the rigors of a full 17-game slate. I think you're going to see a much, much better version of Tuli out there. Also, you bring in Bud Dupree, who's going to effectively replace Chris Rumpf in that edge room, and you have one of the deepest, most talented edge rooms in the entirety of the NFL. I mean, my goodness, I don't think that there's a single offensive line out there that is going to be excited to play the Chargers when you have this collection of edge rushers and this amount of talent that's going to be coming at you full force every single snap.
Yeah, and I already put my name on it. I think it's the best overall edge group in the entire league. I don't think there's a deeper one in the league when you're talking about Bud Dupree being your fourth edge rusher. And when you're talking about the most improved unit on the Chargers defense, the single biggest projected improvement is the improvement of Bud Dupree over Chris Rumpf. That to me, there's such a gap there between a guy who has 50 plus career sacks and a dude who hasn't worked out the NFL level and is on the roster bubble.
Yeah.
That's a huge improvement. And being able to bring back Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, to have even Bud Dupree under contract now through 2025 and Tuli for the next 3 seasons. And even Joey Bosa, if he goes off, you still have him under contract next year. And you could probably work that around. He's still a youngish player at his position. So a lot to like in that room. So even if it's just one addition, that is the room that looks most improved. And the other thing is every other position group has a huge question mark. So when you're talking about where the biggest question mark is, I ended up going with defensive line, but you pretty much could sell me on anything outside of the edge rusher group that we just talked about.
No, I'm with you on the defensive line. I think that's where my mind went to first as well. You just have a lot of question marks there. Can Poona Ford come in and provide some quality snaps, right? A guy that just didn't get to play a lot last year. He's a veteran. What role is Justin Eboigbe going to be able to attain in his rookie year? I mean, you got to love what he brings to the table. He's a very technically sound player as a rookie, but you just never know. Christopher Hinton comes back for the Chargers there, and then you got Scott Matlock, Otita Abonia, who you just want to see him get healthy and stay healthy and see what he's able to produce on the football field, and just got to know what that rotation is going to look like. I mean, there's just a collection of bodies there. There's nobody that's standing out right there. But if they're able to find the right rotation, if they're able to complement each other well, I mean, that's the room I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to look like under Jesse Minter.
And I think the reason that it becomes the biggest question mark as far as the position groups on defense is because literally every single guy you talked about has a giant question about them, right? Yeah. And Poona Ford is the biggest addition there, and I like him.
Yeah.
He's still at best a rotational defensive lineman. I don't think you can look at this group and say that you have an above average established defensive lineman in that room right now. You have some specialists, you have some guys that do certain things very well. You have a couple guys you could maybe hope for more from, like Morgan Fox is an above average interior defensive line pass rusher.
No doubt.
Poona Ford at his best can be a solid rotational player, but can he play and be your starting guy from week 1 and think that you have a good group there? Justin Eboigbe is a rookie. Tito, Scott Matlock, we haven't seen anything from those guys yet over any kind of extended period. So many question marks in that group. I think the overall talent, it's hard to say that the Chargers don't have one of the least talented defensive lines in the NFL right now. I don't know who you feel great about, over the moon about. Can the collective come better and play better than the sum of its parts? Sure. You have a new coach. You have guys that the new coach feels like he can work with. Drafted a guy. You brought in Poona Ford, who played well, honestly, in the little time that he played last year with the Bills. So a lot of question marks in that group. I do think the defense on the Chargers will be better, but there's still a ton of questions that have to be answered in that room. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here because you know what Tuesday is. It's Buy or Sell Tuesday. And then make sure you're subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from, because on Wednesday, we have a Charger coming on the show. Bradley Bozeman, we're lucky enough to get some time from him. So excited. So many questions for him. I mean, I really, really can't wait to see what he's looking to improve on and potentially a bounce back season for him, and just for this offensive line room in general, what Greg Roman brings to the table. So many questions, and I can't wait to get to it. So make sure you guys are here for that, and to make sure you don't miss it, you can also follow us on all of our social media spots. You can find us on Twitter at LockedOnLAC. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Drugmeyer at DroTalkSD. We also post the show every day on our Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Buy or Sell, and we'll put out a post at Locked On LAC so you can give us your guys' buy or sells as well, or call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. But thank you guys for checking out today's show, because it is your team every day, and we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.